everybody, I'm Rebecca Virginia, and today I'm going to be sharing with you my favorite Christmas DIYs from 2021. Let's get started. First up is this snowy church that I made using arrows from the Dollar Tree. Here are all of the other Dollar Tree supplies that you'll need to recreate this project on your own. To begin creating our church, I am taking two of the arrow signs from the Dollar Tree. The smaller wood arrow I did cut in half, and then the larger wood arrow we're going to be leaving as is. And I'm taking the shade Territorial Beige by Apple Barrel, and I'm doing that to paint the larger wood arrow sign. And then on the smaller arrow that I have cut into two pieces, I took a dark brown shade, but I actually ended up not liking how the dark brown came out. I thought it was looking too much like a haunted house. It was just coming out really dark and not at all the snowy chapel that I wanted. So I ended up actually flipping the smaller arrow over. I did like how the larger arrow came out when I added the darker brown color. It really kind of created a fake wood. Well, it was wood, but you know what I mean. It came looking out a little bit more barnwood. And then for the smaller arrows, I just flipped them over and painted them in a lighter brown. And then I went in with white paint and dry brushed it to again make it look like that barnwood that I have seen so many people making churches out of barnwood and pallet wood. I don't know where they got that from, but I didn't have access to that. So these Dollar Tree arrows had to work for me. And then I just hot glued the larger arrow on top of the two smaller ones, and you can see our church is starting to be created. For the cross that is going to be going at the top of the church, I took two toothpicks and I just snapped them in half to create our cross. And then I'm taking a silvery gray color, but I'm going to be covering this later in white paint to make it look nice and snowy. So really the color that you paint the cross doesn't really matter because we're going to be going over it with white paint. And then once this paint had dried, I added a bit of hot glue to, of course, create our cross. And in the meantime, while that paint is drying before I hot glue it together, I am using these tumbling tower blocks to create an awning that's going to be going over our church door. I didn't do anything to the blocks quite yet because first I'm going to be painting the church door, and I just kind of wanted to tell how large I needed to make the door. So I'm taking a dark brown paint, which is going to be the outline of our door. And then in just a moment, I'm going back in with white paint to create the actual door, not the frame. I painted the two tumbling tower blocks in the same Territorial Beige color. So while those were drying before I add them above my church door, I went ahead and hot glued the cross together, and then put a little hot glue at the bottom and placed that at the top of our church. Then I moved back to the church door area, and I am hot gluing the tumbling tower blocks to the top area of the door. And then I could have gone in with some white paint to give the snowy effect, but I had some white felt on hand, so at first I had cut out two different shapes, and I'm just trying to create the most realistic snow that I can. I ended up going with a larger piece instead of two smaller ones, and that is what I hot glue on top of the tumbling tower blocks. I also took some white paint and added it to the cross at the top of our church to make it look like it had a bunch of snow on it. I took my remaining white felt fabric and added it to the other edges of the church, adding it all the way at the top and on that middle section as well. The finishing touch was adding a bit of color to my snowy church. I found these ornaments from the Dollar Tree. You got two of them in a pack, and I thought they were so cute. So first I took off the ornament section, and I didn't want to mess up the tree, so I just kind of twisted and pulled, and that came off. And then I added some hot glue on the back as well as the bottom base, and I placed two trees opposite the door. I staged this on my mantle and included two of the larger flocked snowy Christmas trees from the Dollar Tree. Next up is a Merry Christmas ornament door hanger. I did stage it in my Christmas tree, but this is really meant to be a hanging sign. Here's what you need to make it. I'm going to be taking this Merry Christmas ornament and basically just reworking it. It's still going to say Merry Christmas and be an ornament hanger, but I'm going to change up the way it looks a bit. So I just flipped it over and I'm going to be working with the plain blank MDF board. This is a lot easier than sanding off all that glitter. The bottom half I used a dark red color, and then the top half I am taking a damp paper towel and some Waverly wax in the shade Antique and just rubbing this into the top section of the ornament. Now I'm really going to be using the painter's tape for its actual purpose. I am placing this on the bottom section of the ornament because I'm going to be creating a gold stripe. I had this really pretty gold ribbon that I'm going to be trying to use on the top of our ornament. So to kind of tie in the gold ribbon, I thought a gold stripe going through the ornament would be really pretty. I'm taking this gorgeous gold metallic paint and putting that in between my two pieces of blue painter's tape. Once that paint was dry, I peeled off the painter's tape and I wrote out Merry Christmas using some vinyl. But if you don't have a cutting machine, these galvanized words from the Dollar Tree are really beautiful, and I also think would look great on this wood ornament. And then I placed the words on the ornament and the ornament topper back on. I tried out a bow that I have never made before on this DIY and really loved it, so I want to share it with you. I took some ribbon from the Dollar Tree and I made this small little loop. This is going to be the center of our bow. You're going to pinch it or cinch it in the center. Now, if you have double-sided ribbon, you don't need to do this step, but for me, I had to grab the ribbon and twist it so that it was right side up. Then I'm going to repeat the process, but this time making a little bit bigger of a loop, pinching it all in the center, and then moving my ribbon to the other side. Again, it's not double-sided, so I'm having to pinch and twist. After I have twisted the ribbon right side up, I want it to be about the length of the loop I just made so it mirrors it. So I made it a little bit larger than the center, and then again I pinched it all in the center, moved the ribbon to the other side, then pinched and twisted so that my ribbon was the correct side up. If you're using wired ribbon, I would really suggest that. It would make things a lot easier and not so thick. But I didn't, and it can be done, so if you don't have it, don't worry. Again, this time I am making a larger loop than the one that I did before. Then I'm doing the exact same thing on the other side, mirroring that loop that I just made. Pinch it all in the center. By this point, it's going to be getting pretty thick in the center there. Then pinch and twist so that you flip the ribbon the correct side up. And I'm having to count there because I want 7 loops total, but 6 that mirror one another. And when I say that I'm moving the ribbon to the other side, I'm pretty much just moving that spool back and forth to my left and right side so it's not getting all twisted. And this is going to be my 5th and 6th loop, so my last bit. Again, when I have it in the center, I am pinching and twisting to make it right-sided up. And then I am making my final 7th loop. I had to make sure I had my math correct. So there are going to be 3 sets and a center, or 7 loops total. And then I pinched everything into the center. And how you make a tail is after I cut off the extra, I am making one big hanging loop down the center. And we'll cut that into tails in just a second and you'll understand why I did that. Then I took a zip tie, and this bow is pretty thick, so I am using the zip ties from the Dollar Tree and just cinching the entire bow together, and this will ensure that none of it comes apart. The other great thing about this bow, I probably practiced about 5 times before I filmed it, and because until at the very end when I cut those tails, which I'm about to do right now, there's no cutting involved, so it's a really great bow to practice on because again, I practiced on the same piece of ribbon about 5 times, and every time that I messed up, I just undid the ribbon. There was no cutting involved, so it's kind of a nice way to practice your bows. Now here is, if you had wired ribbon, it'd be a lot easier. I am shaping the bow, just playing around with it until I get the shape that I like. The last step was hot gluing the bow onto the top of our Merry Christmas ornament. I really love this sign, especially the emphasis on the cross T. The next DIY uses a very unlikely supply from the Dollar Tree. Here is everything that you'll need to recreate these rustic candlesticks. So yes, the unlikely item from the Dollar Tree is going to be one of their plungers. And I took the actual plunger stick and I cut that into two pieces, one measuring 6 inches and one measuring 4. Then I painted it in this light brown color called Territorial Beige. And to get the faux birch wood looking kind of texture, I took a stippling brush from the Dollar Tree and some white paint and just stippled all the way across in horizontal directions. Also, I apologize for my voice in this portion of the video. I am a little bit under the weather, so sorry about that. And now we are going to start decorating these candles. So I already did the smaller one, and I will walk you all through how I do the larger one. So I'm taking some of this light brown fabric, and I'm cutting two pieces to be the long sections that are dangling, and then one smaller section which is going to wrap around the top. You could just tie this in a knot, but I didn't like the big bump that it gave, so I kind of faked it and did the two hanging sections glued down first and then covered it in that smaller section. Then I had this really nice corded thread or corded string, and I just tied that in a knot around the fabric at the top and let it dangle down. And then I took some beads, so I had green and blue beads. So on one end I am doing a green bead, and then on the other hanging string I am doing a green and blue bead, and both at varying lengths, and you can kind of change this up as you go on, as long as you're not putting it up too high and cutting it. I did kind of change it up and shorten one of the lengths. Then I am doing pretty much the exact same thing, but this time with a bow. So I made a bow with really long tails, and then I took some of these wood stars that I had and hot glued them onto the string. So I included in these supplies some little light bulbs, and you could paint those and put those at the top of your candlesticks. But I wanted mine to be a bit more rustic, so I took some cardboard and peeled it off so that it was the corrugated sections, and then cut them out into the shape of flames. I had these small little wood pieces, so I hot glued the flames onto the top of those, and then hot glued the stick that is attached to the flame onto the top of our candlestick. Next up is a DIY all about the true reason for the season. Here are all of the supplies from the Dollar Tree that you are going to need to recreate this DIY. Our next DIY is using a pizza pan from the Dollar Tree. I painted the entire pizza pan in the color Territorial Beige, and then I went in shading with a darker brown color called Burnt Umber by Apple Barrel, but ultimately I decided to actually paint the entire inner section of the pizza pan in a dark brown color, that Burnt Umber color, which you'll see in just a moment when the whole pizza pan goes a little bit darker. Then I have this really pretty wood nativity set from the Dollar Tree. I was so excited that I found this at my Dollar Tree. And at first I was a little confused because baby Jesus, Mary, and Joseph did not all fit in this little awning. And then I realized, oh, it's only meant for baby Jesus, so they had to go on the outer parts. And I stained this using a dark brown stain called Antique by Waverly. You could turn this into a hanging sign by just adding a jute hanger on the back of the pizza pan. I'm going to use it actually standing up. I think I'm going to place it on my mantle. And now we are going to move into decorating the top of the pizza pan. I'm doing this with greenery. So I have this green garland and these lighter green sprigs from the Dollar Tree. So I placed those on top and then started shaping them. And of course we had to add in some snowiness and some outdoors. So I added pine cones and then these sparkly white picks. And also I made a double bow. I have a whole tutorial on this in another video, so I will link that above. I also cut out Jesus is the reason for the season using my cutting machine, and I placed that down. but you could always freehand it or print something out and paste it. And then I just took some of this jute cord and made it a little bit spirally and curly and added that to the opposite sides of our bow. I made these tumbling tower block people last year for Valentine's Day, but I took that DIY and transformed it into a Mary, Joseph, and Baby Jesus nativity scene. To start building our people, I took some hot glue and I'm just gluing the tumbling tower blocks together. And I ended up doing this for every single one, so they all came in pairs. And then I combined them together to make our couple. I wanted one of my wood people to be taller than the other one, but an entire tumbling tower block was too tall for me, so I ended up cutting one of the tumbling tower blocks in half and hot gluing them together. Then I used this yellow color called taffy, and I painted some wood beads, and they are going to be my people's heads. Next, it was time to attach the heads to the bodies, and I did this with some hot glue. And then to make our baby Jesus, I am taking a traditional clothespin and my miter shears. I got these off Amazon. I'll link them below. They're really great for kind of substituting the use of a saw in a lot of my wood projects. And as you can see, this is going to be placed there. But before I do that, I am first taking the shade Territorial Beige by Apple Barrel, and I just painted Joseph a different color than Mary, and then I took some white Waverly chalk paint, and I am painting that clothespin that I just cut. For the material that's going to be going on Mary and Joseph's heads, I took some of this scrap fabric that I had. It was kind of a linen or like a muslin kind of fabric. And for Mary's, I kept it white. For Joseph's, I did stain it in a bit of leftover coffee that I had in the morning. So I let that sit in the coffee for about 20 minutes and then I pulled it out to dry. And I'm just taking some hot glue and kind of getting Mary's clothing to go over her head, using the hot glue to position it into place. And my coffee stained fabric still wasn't dry yet, so I moved on to positioning baby Jesus since I had the hot glue out. Then I wrapped some jute around him so it looked like that was what was actually holding him up. And then I also made a jute bow and hot glued that onto the center. Once my coffee stained fabric had dried, I'm doing to Joseph the exact same thing that I did to Mary, using the hot glue to position my fabric into place. DIY I will be sharing with you is a faux barnwood birdhouse. Here are all of the supplies you'll need to recreate this project. I'm starting off this DIY by taking my wood pieces from the Dollar Tree and painting them. I'm using the shade Territorial Beige by Apple Barrel. I'm using this wood arrow from the Dollar Tree, this wood cube kind of piece, and some tumbling tower blocks. Then to create the faux barnwood look, I am taking a stippling brush and some white paint and just messily creating some white dry brushing strokes. Once all of that paint has dried, it's time to start making this look a bit more like a birdhouse. So for the awning or the roof of a birdhouse, I am using the tumbling tower blocks and some hot glue to place that on the top section of our arrow. Now, this box from the Dollar Tree is purely going to be for holding up our birdhouse, so you could use a smaller base, maybe a couple tumbling tower blocks, whatever you want to hold up your birdhouse, or maybe if you know that you're going to be leaning this against a wall, then you wouldn't need that section at all. But now it's time to start embellishing. So first off, I had to make the hole for our birdhouse. So I'm using a couple different shades of paint, and then I went over it with a little bit of white paint. And to create the woodland effect, I am laying down some garland pieces from the Dollar Tree. Then I knotted twice a piece of burlap ribbon, and I'm just going to kind of messily place that over the garland. I kind of made a long X shape with the garland, but really it's up to you. You can make whatever shape or style that you want. I did have to trim some of these garland pieces because they were a little bit too long, and I wanted my birdhouse to be a little bit messy, but not too messy. It's truly a fine line between the both. For that bright pop of Christmas red, I added in a small cardinal and also a snowy pine cone. The last step was adding some snow onto my garland pieces. I did this with white paint and a paintbrush. This merry crate is the perfect way to bring some pops of green garland and candlelight into your home. Here's what you need to make it. In this DIY, I'm taking one of the plain wood crates from the Dollar Tree and painted it a dark brown color and then filled it with some floral foam. Yes, this is some old used floral foam that I've had throughout the years, but I wasn't using those projects anymore, so I repurposed the floral foam for this DIY. So you saw me just place down a candlestick. It's one of the emergency LED candlesticks from the Dollar Tree, and I had wrapped it in jute, and I am placing that in the center of this crate inside of this glass jar that I also got from the Dollar Tree. And the next part is completely up to you. I took some pine cones, red berries, and a bunch of these garland picks from the Dollar Tree, and I'm kind of just playing around with how I'm going to fill up my crate. It's really just a matter of preference. If you like more color, you can add in maybe some jingle bells or little Christmas ornament pieces. I kept it pretty neutral with the woodland theme, so just having things that pretty much occur in nature, so the holly berries and the pine cones. And at first I thought I added in too much garland, so you'll see me take it out, put it back, and I kind of go back and forth with how full I want this crate to be. And once I had everything inside my crate, I did add one extra little pine cone that didn't have snow on it, so I did add some white paint to that. For the final step in this DIY, I had some jingle bell garland from the Dollar Tree. So I just wrapped this around the glass section in the center of our crate. And I also took one of the Merry wood ornaments from the Dollar Tree and lightly stained it and placed it at the front of the crate. Next up is this cozy looking candle that uses an old mitten. Here are the other supplies you'll need to complete this DIY on your own. This is a really quick and a really easy DIY, but I think it looks very high-end and like something you would find in Home Goods. So I am just taking this tall, super sparkly green candle and placing it inside of my mitten. This is one of those mittens that throughout the years I lost its mate, but I held on to because I thought I could use it for some sort of DIY. Then I scrunched down the mitten and it left some fuzzies on my candle, so that's why I got the lint roller and kind of fixed the candle. If your candle comes with a plastic on it, I would just leave it because it's not like we're going to light this candle anyway. It's just for decoration. And then super simple, I'm adding some garland that has a berry and a pine cone on it and just hot gluing that to the bottom left part of the candle. I had one of these icy twig pieces that I really liked too and thought kind of went with the sparkleness of the green candle, so I went ahead and hot glued that down onto the candle as well. And that's all that you need to do. It is so easy and requires very minimal effort, but I think the end result is so beautiful and looks great on the mantle. This faux book stack using a Dollar Tree crate will look perfect on a tiered tray or displayed on your mantle. Here's what you need to recreate it. For this DIY, I am taking the wood crate from the Dollar Tree and I painted it entirely in some white chalk paint. Now for each of the books, we're going to have a different scrapbooking paper. So for the middle one, I have this really beautiful Christmas plaid. And once I cut out the proper length, I then just started to rip and peel all along the edges all the way around so it looked like an old worn book. And to adhere this onto the wood crate, I just took a plain glue stick and glued it down that way instead of using hot glue. And I'm going to be repeating these steps 2 more times, but this time with this different kind of faux burlap scrapbooking paper. Again, cutting out the piece, and then once I have my desired length, I am just starting to rip all along the edges, not too much because I still want it to take up a good portion of, I believe it's a 1-inch slot in the wood crate. And then I am just going to be gluing that down, and I'm using the same burlap paper on the top and the bottom. To go on top of our faux book stack, I am going to take some scrapbooking paper and this wood Christmas tree ornament, and I just cut out some paper and then glued it down on top of it. And to make sure this can actually rest on top of our book stack, I also painted a small wood block. I will be adhering the tree to that in just a moment. I wanted my book stack to say something about Christmas. You can write on the faux book stack using a pen, a Sharpie, some of these rub-on letters from the Dollar Tree. I ended up finding this Fresh from Christmas Trees saying on Cricut Design Space, so I did cut that out using my cutting machine, but you don't need it. You can just take a Sharpie or a pen and write on the book stack. Next, I took some jute and just placed it around the faux book stack and tied it into a bow. Now that the wood block has dried, I will be adding that to my Christmas tree, but first I did take a wood star and some brown stain and added that on top of the tree ornament. Then once I have the wood block down, I can have it freestanding on top of the book stack. So I hot glued that down at a slight angle, and then to add a little bit more color and some Christmas spirit, I took some sprigs of this garland from the Dollar Tree, and I thought 2 was a little bit too much, so I ended up just using 1 sprig and a small pick of berries and hot gluing that down on top of the book stack as a final touch. The next DIY is a freestanding home decor piece using a Dollar Tree tree topper. Here's what you need to make it. To start off this DIY, I'm taking a tree topper from the Dollar Tree, and I'm only going to be using it for the star outline. So all of this ornate section in the center here, I am cutting out using regular scissors, and also the purple scissors are dog nail trimmers from the Dollar Tree. It works really great in cutting some harder to cut projects. In just a bit, we'll be placing our star down into some floral foam, but so that we have something to actually stick into the floral foam, I'm taking some hot glue and a wood dowel and just placing that inside of our star form. Now it's time to start really creating this freestanding star. So I am taking some garland, of course from the Dollar Tree, and hot gluing it all the way around the star. I ended up using 3 pieces of the Dollar Tree garland to complete the entire way around the star. To create the snowy look on our garlands, I'm using a chip brush and just some plain white paint and just going over the garland pretty messily and just putting some white paint on it so it starts to resemble some snow. To turn this into a freestanding decor piece, I'm taking one of these little boxes from the Dollar Tree. It has green and red sides with polka dots, and I placed some floral foam down in the center of it and stuck our star through. And I did take it out of the box while I was threading the lights through just because I kept toppling it over, but I'm taking this pair of copper wire lights. They are found in the floral section usually at the Dollar Tree, and I really like the warm white light that this gives off. And I'm just wrapping this all the way around our star. And then once I've wrapped it all the way around the star, I am going to cut down the wood dowel even further using this pair of miter shears. And this way I will place the battery pack in the back of the floral foam, and when I place the star down on the wood dowel, you aren't going to see it anymore. You will only see the silver base of our tree topper. And then to hide the floral foam and the battery pack, I grab some of this fake snow blanket from the Dollar Tree, and I just wrapped it around the star and kind of tucked it around in places and cut off any excess. This is a quick and easy ornament DIY using a birdhouse from the Dollar Tree. Here are all of the supplies you'll need to recreate this project. This DIY is really quick and easy, and I think would be really fun to do with kids because until the very end, there isn't very much hot glue needed, so it is very kid-friendly. And I decided to make mine a snowy looking birdhouse, so it really did look like it was meant to be outdoors and was brought in on your tree. But especially if you have kids, you can give them lots of different colors of paints and have them paint their own Christmas birdhouse or just birdhouse in general. And to give mine a snowy effect, I sprayed some glue adhesive to the roof of my birdhouse and the front, and I'm taking some of this artificial snow from the Dollar Tree. Then once all my paint and snow was on, I added a couple of embellishments. So I took a bit of garland and this little berry pick, and I wanted to add some of that fake snow onto the greenery and berries as well. So I put some more of that spray adhesive onto that section, and then some of the snow that had fallen off the roof earlier and onto my table I was working on, I just picked up and placed down. And to turn this into an ornament, I just took some jute and made a very simple knot and added some hot glue to the back, and then it was ready to be hung on my Christmas tree. Next is a Christmas tree sign that you can change up with differing scrapbooking paper to fit the style of your home. Here's what you need to recreate it. The Dollar Tree throughout the seasons this year has come out with these signs in a couple of different scrapbooking paper backgrounds and sayings, but for this project we are not going to be using that. So I ended up just taking that apart in this really beautiful birch tree scrapbooking paper I cut out to size and then just glued it down before placing it back into our frame. I'm going to be using the Christmas tree wood ornaments for the Dollar Tree as the main focal point of this project. So I was just laying them out to make sure that all three of them fit. And then I looked through my scrapbooking papers. I had a lot that I really liked, but ended up going with these three different patterns, and I cut out and then glued down onto our wood ornaments. I also took a Mary ornament from the Dollar Tree and these wood stars and stained them in the Waverly Wax in Antique. And as a small final touch, I made a bow out of raffia and hot glued that to the side of our sign. This is a really quick and easy one, and you can use whatever scrapbooking paper you have laying around your house. DIY in today's video is a buffalo check reindeer light up bottle. Here are all of the supplies you'll need to make this project on your own. So the first step for this DIY is we're going to take a bottle. This is actually a vinegar bottle, but I think a wine bottle or really anything that comes in a bottle is going to work too. And then I took some Waverly white chalk paint and I ended up doing 2 coats to really make this good and opaque. So now that our white paint on the bottle is dried, I'm going to be using this Crafter's Square vinyl paper. This is just a hint that even if you don't have a Cricut or a different cutting machine, you should still pick up the Dollar Tree vinyl paper because you can use it like I am without a cutting machine. I cut about an inch strip and then I am just placing it all around the bottom part of our jar, and this is the vinyl black glitter paper. And for the holidays, the Dollar Tree came out with black and white buffalo check and red and black buffalo check vinyl paper. So I am cutting, I believe it was 2 inches, and then I changed my mind because I thought it was too thick. So I ended up cutting it down to about an inch, basically just the 2 sections of squares. So I cut off the other 2 sections. And now that I have my paper, and it is actually going to be 3 sections, I know I just said 2, but now that I'm looking at it, I actually used 3. So 3 sections of that buffalo check and applying it just like I did before, basically as a sticker and just sticking it onto my bottle. And I'm going to be using that exact same buffalo check red and black vinyl paper but this time on the upper part of my bottle, and here is where I just went with the two. I knew it was somewhere. So up at the top, I'm just going to have two sections of that buffalo check, and I wrapped it around the top neck area of the bottle. The main focus of this bottle is going to be a deer silhouette. I cut this out using my Cricut, but you could use a sticker, a stencil, or just print something off online and then glue it down to the center of your bottle. And up at the top, to add some greenery and embellishments, I made a little pick out of a pine cone, berries, and some garlands. And then I also took a little bit extra berries and stuck that in there too. So you could be done with the DIY at this point, but I have these bottle lights. I got them off Amazon, and when I got them, they came out to about $1.25 a piece. I believe you got 10 or 11 in a set, but sometimes the price goes up. So if the price is too much, then don't buy them on Amazon. Wait till the price goes down. I'll link them below so you can check them out. And all that I'm doing is stringing the lights down into the bottle and then placing the cork, of course, in the top section of the bottle, where you will then just pull the tab, turn it on, and your reindeer bottle will start to glow. Our next DIY is an adorable Christmas sled that you can display on your mantle like me, or hang it like an ornament in your tree. Here's what you need to recreate it. The Dollar Tree really upped their game this year with the wood ornaments. I saw this wooden sled and absolutely loved it and knew that I had to pick it up. So usually when I'm using a stain, this is the Waverly Antique Stain, I will take a wet paper towel, but I was out of paper towels, so I just wet this sponge brush from the Crafter Square section and put the stain on there and then rubbed it into our wood sled. I knew that I wanted my sled to say Merry Christmas, so I did cut this out using some vinyl and my cutting machine. But if you don't have either, you can just use a marker, some paint, or even some of the holiday stickers that the Dollar Tree currently has out. I'm going to be making a bow for this DIY, and I pretty much keep my bows simple and the same. As you could see, I just twisted them in the beginning, then pinched it down, and that creates the bow part, and you have, of course, the tails hanging down. And then to hold it in place, for larger ones, we'll use a zip tie, but for smaller ones like this, I just take a piece of jute and tie it. And then after I shape my bow, I go back in with a smaller piece of that same color or patterned ribbon. And I was lucky on this one because it was a wired ribbon, so I just wrapped it around and then just started twisting the wires together. But if your ribbon is not wired, you can secure it in the back with a little bit of hot glue. Now I'm going to bring in some woodland embellishments. So first I started off with some Dollar Tree garland picks that I added some snow to by using white paint. Then I have these snowy glittery branches that came in a Dollar Tree pick too. So I am just hot gluing one to each side, and then I hot glued the ribbon down in the center and just continued to kind of mess with it, fluff up the bows, and make sure I liked where the tails were. And I wanted to bring in a bit of the red from the Merry Christmas decal, so I also added in some of these red berries that I of course got from a Dollar Tree pick, and I did add a little bit of white paint onto the berries to mimic some snow. Our next DIY is a quick and easy one, turning a Dollar Tree wood piece into a Christmas ornament. Here's what you need. I saw this really cute Scotty Dog wood piece at the Dollar Tree, and I took some plaid scrapbooking paper, cut it out after tracing the wood Scotty Dog on it, and then used a glue stick to place it onto our dog. There was a sticky section on the back of the ornament from where I took off the tag, so I actually didn't even have to add any extra adhesive. I just took a red ribbon and put that on the back of our ornament. Then I grabbed a small piece of this garland from the Dollar Tree, as well as 2 little jingle bells from the Jingle Bell garland the Dollar Tree carries. And I had those hanging off the garland near the Scotty's neck, kind of like 2 little dog tags for our Scotty dog. Lastly, I'm going to be making a very small bow to also go on the garland, and I'm going to be making a fork bow. I will link above. I made a video with extremely detailed instructions on how to make the fork bow, so if you don't already know how to do it, I know I show it a little bit in this video, but I go into a lot of detail in one of my earlier videos with exactly how to make this. So again, I will link that above, so be sure to check that out if you don't know how to create a bow using a fork. And once that was all done, I grabbed my hot glue and just placed this on the side of our garland, and then I grabbed some scissors and shortened the lengths of our bow. The next DIY is my take on Santa's toy sack. Instead of filling this with toys, I instead used a Dollar Tree bag and a bunch of florals, and the best part is it lights up at night. Here's what you need to make this. This is a DIY that looks more complex than it actually is. I took a merry and bright bag from the Dollar Tree, and using my scissors, I cut a small hole in the bottom right of our bag, and then I took the lights and I put these in the bottom of the bag, really in no order. I just placed them down in the center of the bag, and where the lights are going to plug in, the outlet section is what I threaded through the hole that I had. Then I grabbed a bunch of these, I called them marbles, but they're like rocks that are found in the floral section of the Dollar Tree. And I placed these down in the bottom of the merry and bright bag. I want this to be able to stand on its own, so that's why I'm placing this down there. And I will come back and fix that hole in the bag, but for now, I'm just clamping it in place. And you want to shake the bag a little bit just to make sure the rocks are all at the bottom so that your bag will be able to stand on its own. And then I'm taking a bunch of this stuffing and filling up my bag. Next, I'm going to be taking these embellishments and floral picks and adding them to our bag. The first is a plastic candy cane that I got at the Dollar Tree, which I covered in jute and some of that Jingle Bell garland. And then I'll be adding these picks into the bag. The first one I'm keeping as is. I thought it was really pretty with that large peppermint. And then I added in 2 of the holly sections. And I really just placed that down into the stuffing part of the bag and just kind of played around with it and pulled the strings a little bit so that it wouldn't move around too much. And then I added the candy cane in the front section, just coming out of the bag a little bit. And then I just kind of played around with how tight or open I wanted the bag to be and made sure that it was able to stand on its own before moving back to that small hole that was created in the bag so that I could thread through the lights. And I just added a little bit of hot glue and then just squeezed that small section of the bag shut. I really love how this ended up turning out. It just reminds me of something that you're going to find at Home Goods or Hobby Lobby for a lot more than something you could make using some supplies from the Dollar Tree. This next DIY is a nightlight that also doubles as Santa's connection into your home. Here are all of the supplies you need to make this. This DIY is very simple and straightforward. I grabbed one of the nightlights from the Dollar Tree, and then I found the Santa cam design on Cricut Design Space, and I used actually some Dollar Tree vinyl to place this onto the nightlight. But you don't need a Cricut. You could print something out, you could use markers, you can use paint and stickers. There are lots of other ways that you can make this that don't involve using a cutting machine. But I really like the Dollar Tree vinyl. It works well as long as you're not doing really small, intricate cuts or pieces. So if you do have a cutting machine, I would definitely recommend picking up the Dollar Tree vinyl. I have found that it works pretty good for larger projects. This next DIY is a really easy one and kid-friendly. I think it would be a lot of fun to make with the kids. Here are all of the supplies you need to recreate it. So this DIY is a clothespin tree. I am taking these kind of old school traditional wood clothespins. I actually found them on Amazon. I will leave the link below if you wanted to pick them up there as well. And I'm just taking a dark green color and painting them all green, and then used a bit of this brown stain for the star. But if you have kids, they can make it any color they want. They don't have to do the traditional green for a Christmas tree. They can make a pink one, a purple one, really anything. You also don't need hot glue like I'm using to hold them together. You could do traditional Elmer's glue, especially if you're doing this with kids. And then I also just used a bit of glue to attach the star. And I took a cork and cut it a little bit shorter to make the stem of our tree, but you could always do a tumbling tower block or a wood bead. It doesn't need to be a cork, especially if you're doing it with kids, but if you're making it for maybe a wine lover, I think it is a cute personal touch. And I also added a little white bow to the top of our star and some white paint to make it look like our Christmas tree was snowy. You could always just have this as decor, but I thought it made a very cute ornament. So I attached some jute to the back. I just made a knot to make a loop with the jute, and then adhered it with some hot glue, and our Christmas tree clothespin ornament was complete. Christmas video featuring lots of gnome DIYs. I absolutely love gnomes around the holiday season. I think they are so cute. And first up, I am going to be showing you a DIY garland using some yarn to make lots of little gnomes. Here are all of the supplies that you'll need to complete this DIY on your own. Alright, so we are going to kick off this adorable gnome garland by taking a toilet paper roll, and I cut about an inch wide strip. I didn't measure it, but I kind of guesstimated an inch. And then I took this green yarn. It is going to be the hat for some of our gnomes. Some I'll be using red. And I wrapped it around long ways my iPhone 8 Plus about 32 times. And now we're going to start making our hat. So I have an extremely detailed video on how to make this, which I will link above. I did it last year for an ornament, but I'll still explain it a little bit in this video. But if you needed some more angles or more in-depth instructions, go ahead and watch that video. But basically, I'm taking the long piece of, I keep calling it ribbon, but it is yarn, and I'm making a loop, and then I'm pulling it around and through that loop, kind of like if you were making a knot. So again, there's the loop. I thread it under the toilet paper roll and then pull the yarn through and pull it tight. And you're just going to do that for a pretty long time until you cover the entire toilet paper roll. And now we're going to make kind of like the brim of the hat. And you do this by pushing all of the yarn through the toilet paper roll. So now you can see where the brim section of our snow hat is going to be. And now we need to make the pom-pom area. So I'm just taking a piece of that same green yarn and just tying it tight. And then when you pull it through, you can kind of see where the pom-pom is starting to form. I'm going to leave mine long since I'm going to be tying it for garland. And to make my hat nice and poofy, I am taking 3 cotton balls and just pushing those up in the hat and just kind of spreading out the yarn to make sure you can't see the cotton ball. And this is my favorite part, it's when you trim the yarn at the top and it just makes that fun little poof ball, which is going to be on the top of our gnome's hat. Alright, so now I'm placing my hat to the side and we're going to move on to the gnome's beard. And I'm pretty much doing the exact same thing, but this time with white yarn, wrapping it around my iPhone about 30 times. And this one will be a little bit different. So what I did is in the center, I am taking another piece of white yarn and tying it super, super tight right in the center of the loops that we just formed. And then on each of them, I am going to go ahead and take my scissors and cut. And you can kind of see how this is starting to form our gnome's beard. And then you just kind of smush them down and your gnome's beard is starting to form. And to make sure that doesn't move around in the hat, I am hot gluing, and you want to make sure you hot glue the edges of the hat, not the actual cotton balls, because then the hat will just fall off. And you just kind of hold that until your hot glue sets and your gnome's beard is tucked up inside of the hat. And I'm just taking a plain wood bead to be the gnome's nose, and I am hot gluing that right underneath the hat so it looks like his nose is peeking through, and I added a little shiny snowflake to go on his hat. Also, I didn't catch this on camera, but I did shape his beard a bit to be more like a letter V so that it was longer in the front and then got shorter on the sides. And I went ahead and completed all of my gnomes going on my garlands by adding a bunch more in also red hats as well as the green. The next DIY is a trio of wood gnomes. Don't worry if you don't have any scrap wood laying around. You can always use a large piece of foam cardboard from the Dollar Tree, or I'm sure a lot of us have cardboard boxes laying around from Christmas gifts we've ordered, so you can always use a piece of the cardboard. Here's what else you need to make this. My pieces of scrap wood measure 11 inches and 7 inches for the two smaller ones, but you can really make these whatever size that you want. If you know where you want to put this in your house, you can figure out what size would look best. I painted them white just to kind of have a primer, and then I taped out a triangle section in the bottom, I'd say third, and I'm going back in with some white paint just to make it even more of a bright white, and some brown paint because our gnomes have probably been hanging out in the garden and have a little bit of dirt to them. So you can see it's not a huge difference when I remove the tape, but I did want something, again, a bit more of a bright white. And then I'm taping out the other section so that we have two smaller triangles. And on the large one and the smaller one, I'm going to be using a gray paint. And then the other one you can't really see. I didn't know that it was out of frame. I'll show you it. I realize it in a little bit and then I bring it back into frame. But I did gray on these two and then I did a dark green on the last one. For my gnome's hats, I wanted two of them to have the same one. And then I did a different buffalo check one on the green gnome. And I just applied this using a glue stick. Next, it was time to start adding the embellishments to my gnome. I had some wood stickers from the Dollar Tree, and then I also had these felt snowflakes for the Dollar Tree, and I used some of this dark red berry garland and wrapped this around my largest gnome and then the other one that I was kind of mimicking, and I wrapped that around both of them. And then for the one that was a little bit different with the green, I kept the Dollar Tree garland theme, but I decided to make it a little bit more fun and Christmassy, so I took the Jingle Bell garland and wrapped that around him. For the gnome's noses, I used two different techniques. So for the first one, I just used a wood bead, but I thought he needed a larger nose on my largest 11-inch gnome, so I just took some of this like white, very pale pink pantyhose, and I placed two little pom-poms inside, but you could also use a cotton ball. And I twisted that into a ball and then just secured it with a clear elastic from the girls' hair section of the Dollar Tree. And then cut off the excess, and now I have my gnome's nose. To add a little flush to the gnome's nose, I took some of my blush and just a makeup brush and added a little bit of that onto the nose before taking my hot glue gun and hot gluing down the pantyhose nose as well as the wood bead nose. The next DIY is an adorable gnome bottle tag. This looks great when you're gifting wine for Christmas, or it could even be a bottle of apple cider. You'll just hang the gnome off the side and it adds an adorable Christmas decoration to your gift. You could also just use this as an ornament. Here are all of the supplies that you'll need to recreate this DIY. This is going to seem like a very familiar technique as our last DIY. I am taking this ball of yarn and I wrapped it around my phone. You guessed it, about 30 to 32 times. And this was a thicker yarn, so it was a little bit harder to take off of my phone once I was done. But then you were just going to slide it off of your phone, cut one of the ends of the loop, and now we have some long pieces of yarn exactly the same as we did when we made the hat in the previous DIY. And I am taking a shower ring that is of course from the Dollar Tree. This is going to be the main supply in this DIY. And I am doing 2 pieces of yarn at a time, and I'm using the same technique as I did in the previous DIY, taking the 2 pieces of yarn, making a loop, threading that loop underneath the shower ring, then pulling the yarn over and through the loop and pulling it tight on the other side. And as you're doing this, make sure that you are pushing down the yarn on both sides and really smushing them kind of together. You end up fitting actually quite a bit more yarn after you do this so that your gnome has a nice and full beard. We're also going to be making a hat for this gnome too, and I'll be using the exact same technique as before. I am taking a 1-inch wide piece of my toilet paper roll, and then I took some red yarn, wrapped it around my phone about 30 times, and we're going to make a hat yet again using our looping technique. And I just went with a solid color red this time, not the multicolors of green. So I just went all the way around my toilet paper holder with this. And just like before, once I've gone all the way around the toilet paper roll, I am going to gather the ends of the yarn and push it through the hat so we create that hat brim. Then this time, instead of using the same colored yarn as the hat, I'm going to be taking that textured white yarn that we used on our gnome's beard, and I'm going to make a really long tag because this is going to be going on a wine bottle. So I'm going to tie a knot just like we did in our previous DIYs, but when I loop it this time, I'm just going to leave the ends because I'm not sure how long I want this to hang on my bottle. So I'm just going to leave those ends nice and long. And then again, my favorite part, trimming the pom-pom. Now we have to put our hat on our gnome, and the toilet paper roll fits perfectly over the shower ring. You just kind of slide that down, and you could adhere it with a little bit of hot glue. Mine was really snug, so I didn't, but if for some reason yours is loose, you can add a little hot glue. And then I took a wood bead again, and in between his beard and his hat, I just hot glued that. And this is funny, I had ordered a new brush for my golden doodle puppy, but before I tried it out on him, it was just sitting on my dresser, so I figured, all right, I will test this out on my gnome. So I just kind of ran that through the yarn to make it a little bit more messy and wild. And then I'm again shaping his beard in kind of a V or a U shape, and I'm using a plate as my guide. It just helped make things a lot easier. I'd made sure that I gave him a correct haircut. And that is the completed gnome bottle tag. You can test him out on your bottle and make sure that he is the correct length. Then just tie him behind the bottle and he will hang off of it. You could even add a little tag that says to or from near his hat, or just leave it plain. Our next DIY is a light up gnome jar. I knew when I was doing a gnome video I wanted to do something with light so that it would look magical at night, and I used an unlikely jar to create this project. Here's what you need to make this. The unlikely jar I mentioned earlier is going to be a pickle jar, and I'm also using one of these ladies' socks from the Dollar Tree. I used a regular sock because it was pretty see-through when you stretch it over our pickle jar, so that's why I didn't use one of the fuzzier or more thick socks at the Dollar Tree. And make sure that you really wash the pickle jar because it will still smell like pickles. So after giving it a good couple washes to make sure that smell was out, I cut off the heel of my lady's sock and then just placed the jar inside of the sock. And I'm going to be cutting where the grooves are in the jar so that the lid can still get on. But to make sure that my sock doesn't fall down or reveal my actual pickle jar, I am using a bit of hot glue to just make sure that that sock stays up. You are also going to be able to see a little bit of the lid, so I went ahead and painted that white. To make our gnome's hat and his beard, I am taking one of these ornaments from the Dollar Tree. It looks a little scary when you rip the hat off Santa's head, especially when you rip the beard off, but we're going to be using the hat for our gnome, and I just wrapped a little bit of jute around it to kind of make it look a little bit more woodland and whimsical, and then I just put some stuffing up in the hat to make sure it kept its form, and then I carefully removed the beard on our Santa. This is what we're going to be using as our gnome's beard. I also added one of these wood snowflake stickers that the Dollar Tree currently has out, and I just hot glued that onto his hat. Now we are going to move on to assembling our light up gnome. So this is a pretty important step, and I actually kind of messed up on it a little bit, you'll see, so hopefully you can learn from my mistakes. But everything that you're going to be hot gluing is going to be on the pickle jar lid and not on the pickle jar. And this is so that you can still unscrew the lid and fit your lights in. So I'm taking my hot glue and just hot gluing the Santa beard onto the pickle jar lid. And as you can see, you can still remove the lid. I left a bit of I think it was the Santa beard or fur on the back of the hat because I thought it helped hide the pickle jar lid. So I am just hot gluing the hat onto the lid and then hot gluing down some of the hair or the beard in the back that was kind of sticking up. And here is where I messed up, so please learn from my mistake. When I hot glued down my wood bead, I accidentally hot glued it below the pickle jar lid. So you want to make sure that you are hot gluing that wood bead onto the pickle jar lid. You will see in just a moment how I messed that one up. And then I am just trimming my gnome's beard and shaping it a bit, kind of making it longer in the front and shorter on the sides. Next, I grabbed some Dollar Tree lights, and then when I went to unscrew the lid is when I realized, oh no, I hot glued the nose onto the actual jar part. But lucky for me, it didn't really mess it up. It would have been a lot worse if I had glued the beard onto the pickle jar. But because it was just the nose, I could still unscrew and screw back on the lid. It was just a little bit harder and more inconvenient, but it still worked out. I could take the lid on and off. Now we're moving on to the last few crafts of today's compilation video. Next week, I am coming out with all brand new Christmas DIYs, so please make sure to stay tuned for next Thursday. But let's get back to the crafts. We are starting off with this pool noodle candle. Here is everything that you're going to need to recreate this project. To start off this DIY, I'm going to be taking a pool noodle. I couldn't find any of the Christmas ones, so I grabbed a purple one from the Halloween section. And then I took some of this Dollar Tree white paint and I just painted it all white pretty much as a primer. But if you're able to find the red ones from the Dollar Tree, that will save you a lot of time. Now, this is going to be our pool noodle candle. And to fit the tea light inside of the pool noodle on top, I am just placing it on top and tracing it with a pen. Then I'm going in with some scissors and cutting out the area so that the tea light will fit nice and snug inside the pool noodle. And now that I've cut the top of that pool noodle, the tea light fits nice and snug. And here is where, if you had the red pool noodle from the Dollar Tree, your life would be a lot easier. But since I did not, so after I had primed it white and recut it, I'm going in with this color. It's an extreme glitter red by Folk Art. And you'll see in a little bit that I kind of gave up on this technique. So I thought it was going to be a lot more vibrant. And when it dried, you could definitely see the glitter, but I wanted mine to be like Micah's pool noodle and be tons of red glitter. So I ended up doing one coat of this, and it's essentially a little bit of glitter and Mod Podge. And after it had started to dry and it wasn't coming out as vibrant as I wanted it, you will see I changed course and decided to instead go in with some red fine glitter from the Dollar Tree. I am also going to be painting the tea light. I want this to blend seamlessly into the pool noodle so it all looks like one piece. So that's why I am painting the base of this little tea light, also from the Dollar Tree. And you can see once I started to add the red glitter to this pool noodle, it is so much more vibrant and in the Christmas spirit. So I decided to use the red glitter all over and kind of abandon my glitter paint. I think if I did a few more coats, it would be good, but I already had this red glitter on hand, and I just love the vibrancy of this. So I'm trying to conserve my glitter by using a paper plate. And then once the paper plate got fairly full, I would bring in another paper plate and then dump that glitter onto the noodle. And again, glitter, it's messy, so I just set down some craft paper so that when I was done with this, it would be a little bit of an easier cleanup. But anytime you're using glitter, it's pretty much going to get all over the place, so that just comes with it. But the final result was so pretty that I didn't mind. It's also important to get that top section of the pool noodle. We are going to be putting the tea light inside of it, but you want to make sure the edges are also covered in glitter. And then I ended up taking the tea light and just kind of rolling it around in the glitter and using my fingers to make sure that I got the glitter all over that tiny tea light. I let this dry for 24 hours, and then after it was done drying, I did go in with some lightweight hairspray, and I gave that a light coat to help seal in the glitter. And now I am taking some of this glittery, sparkly white ribbon from the Crafter's Square section, and I'm just wrapping this around our pool noodle so that it starts to look like a candy cane. And I just cut it off at the ends and added a little bit of hot glue to secure everything in place. Then I popped in our tea light and it fit perfectly and really blended nice and seamlessly because I had added the glitter to it. I grabbed a 4-pack of these glass little jars from the Dollar Tree and a whole set of their clear shower rings. And then I took some black paint and painted them. A quick tip is that you can actually just paint the inside of the bowl and then it'll look black from the outside without having to put any paint on the outside, so you still get that smooth, glassy, finished look. You just saw I just popped the shower ring onto the side of that glass dish. I didn't even hot glue it on. It stayed pretty well, but you could hot glue it down if you wanted it to be extra secure. Then I placed some hot glue on the bottom of the pool noodle and stuck it down into the jar, and it was all ready to go and be displayed in my home. The next DIY are some larger pieces of Christmas decor that I made using entirely Dollar Tree items. Here's everything that you'll need to recreate this on your own. This next DIY is combining some ideas from two creators that I love, Glue Guns and Roses and Olivia's Romantic Home. They both did this DIY, but did it a tiny bit different from one another. So right now I am following Olivia's technique of just painting the top section of our deer, his head and his antlers, and then in a bit we're going to be covering his body. And I ended up doing 2 layers of white paint. I didn't need to soak off the glitter. The paint really does cover it up nice and well. And then I took one of these large skewer sticks that I also got from the Dollar Tree, and I am just painting this white to match the top section of the deer. To cover the deer, I'm going to be using some of this buffalo check fleece fabric. Actually, it's not fabric, it is a scarf from, of course, the Dollar Tree. And not only would it be very cute to wear, but it works great for this DIY. So I am taking some hot glue and putting it on the sparkly parts of the deer, and then just laying down the fabric over it. You want to make sure you're getting all parts of the deer and really pressing down the fabric so it's not going to have a bunch of wrinkles or puckers anywhere on it. And I'm just continuing adding some hot glue down and pressing the fabric down on top of the deer. I gave the hot glue about a minute or two to dry, and in the meantime, again, I'm just pressing that fabric down and making sure it's nice and smooth, and then I cut it off from the rest of the scarf. And this is when it can get a little bit time consuming. You are going to cut out the deer, so I'm just taking some larger scissors, and then I also use some smaller ones in between, and I'm just cutting off all of that excess fabric so that the only fabric left is covering the deer. Continue cutting the fabric out, and the next part is optional. I decided, just in case, I was going to put this in front of my fireplace and I didn't want you to be able to see the glittery backside. So not only did I paint the back of the deer head white, but I am going to be covering that in fabric too. So once the front side was all done, I repeated the exact same process on the back side, grabbing the other half of the scarf and putting down some hot glue, laying the fabric on top, and then going over it with some scissors to cut out the deer silhouette. And this scarf worked great. I still had quite a bit left over, which I'm going to be using later in this DIY, so you are able to cover the deer front and back and still have some of this buffalo check fleece left over to use. Once I was done with the back, I flipped my deer back over and I started adding some embellishments. I took some garland and cut it into two smaller pieces. The Dollar Tree had these really pretty, puffy, black and white buffalo check bows that I really liked, so I put that down, as well as two little silver bells onto the side. For the back, I am taking a bunch of hot glue. I'm going to be covering this in fabric, so I didn't mind how it looked or how much hot glue I used. So I used a bunch to hold the skewer stick in place. Then to cover up that hot glue, because it didn't look so pretty, I cut out a small section of the buffalo check scarf, and then I used a little bit of hot glue, and I'm just covering the back so then the hot glue marks are not quite so obvious. To make sure that this deer was able to stand up on its own, I'm taking a little bit of floral foam and sticking the skewer stick through that and into this old vegetable can. Next, I took a bunch of these rocks that I picked up at the Dollar Tree, and I am just filling up the vegetable can so that it'll have some weight to it and be able to hold up the skewer stick and our deer. After our rocks were in place, I took what was left over of that buffalo check scarf and I placed the vegetable can on top before pulling up the fleece and basically just covering up so it looked prettier, and then taking a piece of jute and wrapping that around so it looked like a nice bundle. As the last little embellishment, I took some more garland that had a larger silver bell attached to it and just wrapped that around the bundle. The last DIY in today's video is a Christmas trees sign that I saw DIY Home and Crafts make. Here's everything that you'll need to make this DIY on your own. I took a Halloween sign from the Dollar Tree and I covered up the beware and all the glitter with some white paint. I didn't show that because it was kind of boring and took a couple of coats. But then I went in with some brown paint and my stippling brush, and I'm just creating some faux wood lines so I could make this look like it was a wood plank. Then I took my Cricut and I cut out with some vinyl Helen and Ed's Christmas trees. I will also link a really adorable Christmas tree farm printable, so if you don't have a Cricut, don't worry, you can still do this DIY. And Helen and Ed's Christmas tree farm is actually a real Christmas tree farm. It is owned by my cousin's family, so I am making this sign for her. If you live in Pennsylvania, check it out. Then I took these two ornaments. They were glittery branch-looking trees, and I am hot gluing two to each side. Then I grabbed some nautical rope, and I am wrapping it twice around the ends of our sign. I love how the sign looked with the trees and the rope, but I still thought it needed some pops of color, so I picked up these ornament fillers from the Dollar Tree and I am placing two hollies on the opposite sides, and then I took a wood star. I got, I think it was 100 in a pack at Hobby Lobby. I have so many wood stars, and I stained it with paint and water, and I'm placing that in the center. For a lot of my hanging signs, if I don't want to make a jute hanger, then I will use the soda tab trick. And what you do is just take the tab off of your aluminum can and bend it a little bit and then apply it with some hot glue to the back of your sign, and it works great to hold up the signs.
Those were the last few projects to round out today's Christmas compilation video. Again, please make sure to tune in next week for a brand new Christmas DIY video. Until then, thanks for watching. Keep searching, keep creating.